Well, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode number 69 of the Faith and Pop Culture Podcast. It is me, your host, and I'm joined once again by the ever festive Nyah Carlson. How are you doing today, Nyah?
I'm feeling holly and jolly. How are you?
I'm in the spirit. I'm feeling like we are a week away from Christmas.
Oh, yes.
And even less away from Christmas Eve, which, in my opinion, is perhaps my favorite day of the year. I love Christmas, but Christmas Eve, I mean, that's where it's at. Like that, you get all excited. You sit by the tree. You go to the candlelit, Christmas Eve services. Like I'm all in for Christmas this year. And I thought this is going to be, as if you can't tell from our festive attire, this would be a Christmas-themed episode to end off the year on a very festive, holly jolly note, as long as Nyah's flashing hat doesn't give me epilepsy or...
The button doesn't work, so to hold it down.
Yes. As Nyah attends her Christmas rave there, we will dive into Christmas stuff. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to just sort of... we're going to meander through... kind of this conversation, because I do think there's so many different things, especially as a Christian, but I think just culturally about Christmas that always seems to come up at this time of year, either for positive, for negative, people arguing, people, showing extra cheer and kindness. Like, you sort of have the full gamut of just, this human experience that we have at the Christmas season. And it is like, and I've talked before, I think maybe even on this podcast, that in some ways, like, Easter should be our big day as the church. In some ways, it still is.
That's
but
a good point, yeah.
like, that is sort of the, like, the birth doesn't necessarily matter without the resurrection. And, like, that's the death. Like, that is sort of the heart. And yet, like, there's just something about Christmas, like, that it's so much more than just, like, even, like, more than just a religious holiday. Like, I know a lot of people attend church at Easter that maybe don't normally attend, but, like, a lot of people attend church at Christmas time, and that is sort of one of those areas, maybe at least for now, maybe some other people would like to change this, but like where it seems like the religious roots are still very much ingrained, like in our culture at Christmas time. Like, we still sing Christmas. You still go to the mall and you hear people singing about the newborn king, and on the radio. Like, there's so many things about the season that still just have those connections. So I think it is an important conversation. Just like, as Christians, what do we do with that? Like, how do we navigate just sort of the cultural implications of Christmas? How do we honor Christ throughout Christmas? How do we, sort of navigate maybe some of the cultural elements, and, for good or bad? I know we came across an article. I don't know, Nyah, maybe you want to give some of these kind of statistics of, maybe just to set the stage a bit for just the kind of the way people celebrate Christmas, like the degree that it still very much is like, it's a religious holiday, but it's also very much like a wider cultural celebration.
Yeah, so I think it was Lifeway Research came out with these stats recently saying that 91% of Americans, wow, English, 91% of Americans celebrate Christmas. And that's not only Catholics and Protestants, but atheists, agnostics, people who identify with other religions. About half of Americans go to church, and 56% of religiously unaffiliated people said that they would go to church around this time if they were invited. And I think there's stats about that, like, besides Christmas time, but it definitely increases around this time. And then Christmas is the most attended church service of the year. 53% of Americans think they can retell the story of Jesus' birth from memory. And religious unaffiliated are the least confident in recollecting, which I think makes sense. And then 72% of Americans say that Christmas was a historical event. Wow, English! Oh, like, it's a hard language.
Yeah, Nyah's been dipping into the eggnog early, I think, but yeah, I think, and obviously there's a lot more statistics and stuff, but just to show, like, this is very much like a very important, and I think what makes it different too than something like Easter is, like, Easter's a day, like, maybe it's a weekend, you got Good Friday, and like, Christmas is like a season. Like, Christmas, I mean, if you're a monster, you start celebrating that in like the end of October. But for most people, like, you got at least a couple of weeks of where you're singing. It's sort of constantly before you. We decorate trees, we sing the songs, like the focus of our church services. We have customs and traditions and Advent, and there's all these things that, like, Christmas is like a season. So I think there's just more like access points for people to engage with it. Like there's more traditions beyond like, Easter egg hunts or whatever else like that, that you do on a day and then you kind of move on. And I guess like the question for us, I think, to get into today is just how should Christians respond to that? Like, because I think you sort of see mixed opinions. Like you see those that are, hey, nice to see you showed up for Christmas service. Where were you back in July? You fake Christian. Like, you should have those sort of people that, like, the real Christians don't just go on Christmas and Easter.
Uh-huh.
Like, and then you also have those that are like, hey, like, this is awesome. Like, we have a whole season in our calendar that's like built around an important Christian event.
Yeah.
And people are at least somewhat open to it. Like, let's jump into that. Like, let's capitalize on that. Like, let's embrace that and be happy that they come, even if it's only for Christmas and Easter, just so that they can hear the gospel. Like, there's so many different opinions and stuff on how you do it.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I don't know where you fall on some of this stuff, because I know me and Sam talked about this back, over the years on this podcast. But even just like the whole like annual Christmas kind of culture war stuff of, like you had like the Starbucks cup, and it's like, well, they didn't put Christmas on it. They put Happy Holidays, like, therefore corporate America like hates Jesus, or, whatever. Like, you sort of have all this kind of culture war stuff, and which is too bad, because I think that it does sort of cloud I don't know, it clouds the opportunities that Christians have at this time of year. I think
Mhm.
takes our focus kind of off of Jesus and on just sort of towards fighting our like ideological,
Even
political
yeah, even
battles.
more than like consumerism does during this time, I would think.
Yeah, like in some ways that's even worse. Like it's even worse. Like
Yeah.
yeah, what's consumerism's probably not good, but at least like I'm buying. I spent too much on gifts for my kids. Like at least I'm buying them gifts. Like it's not like it's not like I'm doing something horrible. I'm just maybe putting too much focus on that, and like whereas thing like the culture war stuff is like you're not really benefiting anyone but yourself. Like it's very.
Mhm.
I mean, you could say you're trying to fight the war so that culture, remains grounded in its Christian roots, and ultimately that lead. Like I get all the arguments for, and there is a place to push back on stuff. But even like our president Trump was, he was doing like a rally thing, earlier this month, and kind of was making the claim, kind of leaning into the culture war stuff of saying, everyone's saying Merry Christmas again, and kind of made a big, pronouncement of, we're not going to say Happy Holidays, like Christmas is back on the menu. Like
Was
it's
it
all going to
an
be about
executive order?
yeah, I don't know what the punishment is for any of those, those wild people that say Happy Holidays to you. But I
Mhm.
don't know. It always has me kind of wondering, like, what does it mean? Because you hear people say, keep Christ in Christmas, or they're taking Christ out of Christmas, and I don't know. Like, I've always sort of wondered, like, okay, well, like, what does that mean though? Like, what does it mean to keep Christ in Christmas, and what does it mean
Mhm.
to take Christ out of Christmas? Like, I don't know, because I don't know what you think. Because some of the implications for me is I don't know. It's like, are we saying that the way that like an atheist does their holiday traditions has the power to like take Christ out of Christmas? Like, I
Which
don't
is
know. Like, I'm just
ridiculous, I think.
to me, it's always been one of those like I don't know. Like, it sounds good as like a sound bite to sort of fight your battles, but like
Mhm.
I don't know. Like, what does it mean? Like, can people take Christ out of Christmas? Like, I don't know. Do we need people that don't believe wishing us a Merry Christmas? Like, where do you fall on some of that? Are you more
Well,
like ready to go fight the battles, or what's your?
I never want to fight a battle, a cultural war. I like Christ didn't come to like. Anyways, that's a soapbox that I could get on, but I think it's similar to like I liked what you were saying about when we did our Halloween episode, talking about how the church, not the church fathers necessarily, but like the early church would find something that was celebrated in the world, and then you said that they were just like, let's make it about God. And I think, I mean, God's word does not return void. And so I think the more people that we can introduce to Christmas and that are celebrating Christmas, the better. I mean, it's also along the lines of the argument that's like, people worship God in different ways. Like some people it's through singing, some people it's through dancing, some through playing sports. It's some through writing. There's so many different ways you can glorify God. How can you how can you have a list of rules and regulations and routine that you have to follow in order to keep Christ in Christmas?
Yeah, and we might touch on this later when we get into kind of some Christmas movies and things. But like, I'm somewhat of an Ebenezer Scrooge apologist. Like, I think, like, obviously he needed a heart change.
Mhm.
I agree with that, but I think he's misunderstood. Like, I think in some ways, like, he doesn't like the materialism of Christmas. I think we can
Mhm.
agree with that. Like, even his sort of famous line of, you keep Christmas in your way and let me keep Christmas in mine. Like, I don't know, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Like, I don't think Scrooge is, I mean, he's not like a believer at that
Yeah.
moment. Like, the idea that he needs to sort of go celebrate in a way, like, obviously once he's like had that experience and sort of changed and sort of encountered God in that way, then it makes sense for him to
Mhm.
keep Christmas in his heart. And I don't know, I think people give maybe Scrooge a bit of a hard time, but I think what I've always taken from some of that is like I feel like the responsibility of keeping Christ in Christmas, if you want to say that, is like that is for Christians. Like that
Mhm.
is like it's not the responsibility of the atheist at Target who's bagging my groceries or whatever, like or clothes or whatever I'm buying. Like that's not their responsibility. Like, I
Mm-mm.
don't need them. Like I don't think Christ's being in Christmas depends on what they wish me as I leave. Like I think that's for Christians. I think Christians are the ones that need to be the light and showing people like what that Christmas spirit is, and that's why I've always thought like some of the culture war stuff, like the if like sort of keeping Christ in Christmas leads you to like hate your neighbor and like the other and you just want to fight and put other people down and
Mhm.
you're not loving, then like I don't know, I think maybe we are the ones that need to keep Christ in Christmas. Like maybe we should look like internal and kind of evaluate, hey, am I
Yeah.
actually keeping, like, what does it mean to keep Christ? Is it just the traditions, or is it actually the spirit, the meaning of the season? And like are my actions of like scorn towards my neighbor who doesn't say the things I want them to. Like, is that honoring of Christ, or
Well,
should
and
we?
yeah, and how are they expected to follow Christmas the way that you think that they should if they don't know God either? Like they don't you can't hold them to the this I guess I don't know if this is the right phrasing, but you can't hold them to the same standard that you would hold a fellow believer to. You just can't. They don't have the same moral values a lot of the time as you do, or the same worldview. So,
Yeah, and it's like, and I just don't know like the effectiveness of like
mhm,
I'm gonna reach over and like slap their hand and be like, how dare you not say, you said happy holidays, say Merry Christmas, and you
mhm.
know this like the act of saying that is
You're going
somehow
around
gonna
hitting
like,
your
oh,
neighbors.
like now I do understand the meaning of Christmas, and that this
Mhm.
rando guy at Walmart is smacking my hand. Like I don't know, I think the more impactful way to have the culture embrace the spirit of Christmas is for Christians in the church to embody that spirit of
Mhm.
love and like show that in very practical, like visible ways. And like even and this is, I won't get on the soapbox. Uh, I might just dip a toe on the soapbox, but I won't step fully on the the soapbox. But even I feel like, and I'm not as strong. I don't feel as strongly as maybe this will sound. Like I understand the value of both, but even I think there's some tension in that way of kind of the way we do Christmas programs, like the church. Like I think like what does it mean for like us to keep the spirit of Christmas, like to keep Christ in Christmas, uh, and I get it. Like, and I've been a part of some of these programs. I've played on the bands. I've done all that kind of stuff. Like I've
Mhm.
seen people impacted by these sort of programs, but I don't know. For me, I also feel like a bit of tension with like sort of the supersized Christmas programs where you have a lot of churches that are like, hey, this is the week where like the non-Christians show up at church. Like we got to make it count. Like we got
Yeah.
to put on like bring in the drama. Like, find all those artists from the closet that we haven't used all year and like, get them up on stage. Like pay a bunch of money. Like because churches are spending this thousands and thousands of dollars
Yeah.
for these programs, and I get it. Like they can be amazing, and I'm someone that, and I think you probably are too, now. Like we're very pro supporting Christian artists and giving them
Mhm.
opportunities. Like so, like
No.
I'm all for that. Like like I have no problem with that side of it. I don't know. Like I think for me, there's a bit of tension between like, but like the spirit of Christmas, like the original Christmas, you have like a baby and a main, like part of like what made that so amazing and miraculous is it wasn't the flashy, impressive spectacle that people expected. Like
Mhm.
they thought there'd be some king coming down and horns and angels and like all this stuff, and it's like, oh no, it's a baby in a manger. Like that's not really what we expected. Like that's like the beauty of Christmas. And there's this thing weird to me about like churches that feel like in order to honor that event, we got to go big. Like we got to
Mm-hmm.
make it, flashy. And I don't know, like for me, it does beg the question of like, like what does that say about our worship the other like 53 days of the, or 53 weeks of the year? Like, is not just like our humble worship for God, like impactful? Like, why do we feel like we need to change when the non-Christians come to impress them, as opposed to just like, hey, come see what we're doing. This is who we are. We're humble. We're worshiping God. Like, so I don't know. I think there is some like valid, like, I think there's things for us to like internally look at as opposed to just worrying about like what that culture out there is doing and why they're
Yeah.
not celebrating it. Like, I think it's worth us sort of analyzing, like, are we as Christians and the church keeping Christ in Christmas and like honoring it in a way that is consistent with the message and like the true spirit of
Well,
Christmas.
then there's the question too, like, if we know someone doesn't celebrate Christmas, should we still be telling them Merry Christmas? Like, is that more for us or is that more for them? Or should we just go to the blanket generic Happy Holidays? Like, maybe just like, oh, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa. Like, just say all of them at once, I think. What was it? Merry Christmas, Christmahana Kwanzaa. I
Yeah,
think
I know.
that's
You
what it
you have those.
is.
It's like, especially like in our culture today, where it's you're so worried about like offending anyone that even a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like the social media posts is, or whatever you celebrate. And I've always been like, hey, you know what? I don't expect some non-Christian that I don't know to wish like, to honor the Christian roots, but I also am not going to not honor it. Like
Yeah.
I'm very much like a, hey, Merry Christmas, like, God bless you this season, joy to the world for you.
Just
Like I'm
shake
very
the
much like lean
hand.
in, yeah,
Merry
and
Christmas.
come to our church program. But like,
We have
I'm very much
camels, yeah.
like like I don't think Christians need to like shy away from the way we embrace that. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I just I more draw the line of expecting others to do that because we did,
Yeah.
and is that our sort of our motivation of like, Merry Christmas, and you're like waiting to see what they say, like to judge them or not, and like it's like maybe it's better just to wish them nothing and just move on with it.
Just don't
Um,
say anything. Just leave.
which hey, that's a good rule of thumb, just in all circumstances. Is maybe don't say things,
The
and maybe
Irish
just move on.
goodbye.
But I think that there is some kind of another part of this conversation too, is just like we said, there's so much like cultural heritage and like the cultural aspect of Christmas and like the religious aspect of Christmas are so like interwoven in ways that I think even if we try hard, like you just can never really untangle. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
culture has influenced the religious aspects have influenced the cultural aspect. Like our traditions have influenced both, and like it's this messy thing where there's all these cultural things, and I think most Christian celebration of Christmas is like a mix of religious and cultural. Where you on the spectrum you are maybe is different for each person, but like I think most Christians are a mix of both, and which just begs the question of like, is that okay? Like how should Christians sort of navigate some of the like the cultural aspects, because you do see Jesus like in scripture, like he was very much a part of his culture. Like
Yeah.
he'd attend the feasts, he'd go on the the pilgrimage, he'd do all these sort of things. And I mean, granted, like he lived in a culture that was largely built around religion, like sort of the Jewish customs, and so it wasn't necessarily like he was just embracing all the Roman pagan customs and holidays. Like, so it's maybe a little different, but I think you do see, Jesus is like at weddings, and he's very much a part of embracing the good aspects of culture. And like, I think a lot of the criticism he got was that he was doing that. Like he was hanging out with
Mm-hmm.
non-Christians at feasts and parties and things. And some of the religious people like, how dare you, you should be in the
Yeah.
temple preaching. Why are you hanging out with people and enjoying sort of this cultural stuff? And so I do think there is at least some affirmation from that. But I think there is kind of some uneasiness, and we've sort of talked a little bit about this off camera, and maybe you can kind of lay it out a little bit. But even just like I think there is some fear and trembling towards some of the cultural stuff, like worry of like, well, like sort of like the so-called like pagan roots of the holiday, and you sort of see all these like fear-inducing headlines about what we're celebrating at Christmas is, did you know that you're celebrating a pagan holiday? And like all these like the dark roots that no one told you about. And
Uh-huh.
it's sort of like, I think, I don't know, like I
There's
think
there's dark roots for everything. That's the power of Jesus, is he can transform things and make them new. Okay? Okay? Calm down.
That will preach. I feel like I need to amen you for that. I mean, I think you are true that like most things have, if you trace them back far enough, probably have some kind of pagan weird roots. Like just because a lot of the stuff came out of pagan culture. So, like a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff, even like in America, or like traditions and just things that we wouldn't think of. I've mentioned before, like the days of the week are all named after pagan gods, and
Yeah.
we just sort of accept that, and no one thinks of that anymore. Like, Thor, I'm Sunday. Oh, it's the sun god. Like, no, it's Sunday. It doesn't mean what it once meant, and I think everyone understands that. So you do have that with Christmas. There is sort of like even this debate about like a lot of, and there's been some like viral posts and stuff going around that we've both seen as far as even like the day of Christmas, like
Mhm.
December 25th, like and how that indicates that Christmas is actually
Mhm.
super problematic. Like, what are some of the give sort of the recap of that? Like, what is sort of some of
Yeah.
the fear or the concern about like December 25th?
Well, first I want to say that I'm going to change the days of the week. I'm going to change their names to reflect like biblical names, just so you know. So be on the lookout for that memo
Yeah,
by the
I'll
end
be
of the
ready to
day.
celebrate. This is the tribe of Benjamin Day or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
It's got to
Monday's
be yeah,
Mishael. It's going to be
yeah. I
great.
can't wait for the day of Moses to be able to go back to work or.
Uh, okay, so well, dig into this pagan history. So a lot of this is focused on why we celebrate Christmas on December 25th, which both you and I just don't think that that's a really big deal, honestly. But they think that some people literally think that it was the literal day of his birth, but then people are like, oh, but would shepherds be in the fields, or would a major census be taking place in December? And other Christians believe that the early Christians picked December 25th because there were already existing pagan celebrations, and so, like you said before, they reclaimed and redeemed the day for God, for Christ. They were like, oh, well, you're celebrating winter solstice, bam, Jesus' birthday. Like, let's celebrate that instead or along with it. And then, yeah, like you said, the early Christians were all about redeeming existing culturally significant dates and practices, and most cultural traditions have previous existing roots. That's just the nature of culture. It
Yeah, and I think
grows.
you kind of see. I don't know. You can make a case for both. Like I think,
Mm-hmm.
like Wes Huff, the apologist that I think highly of. I think he's a solid guy. Obviously went viral for appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like he shared a post just the other day, sort of kind of countering the claims that that Christmas is a pagan holiday, and
Mm-hmm.
or like that was based because of pagan things. And he sort of traces the history, and I mean he's probably done more research on some of that than I have. So like I don't, and I'm not necessarily just fully dismissing that. I personally found some of his claims to be unverifiable. Like
Yeah.
I think there's some leaps, and I think it's hard to ignore. Like winter solstice is a thing like that. Like it's not just like a pagan. Like it's based on, because it's the shortest day of the year. Like
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't invented. Like the rituals around that, the significance given to that is cultural. But like the fact that it's the shortest day of the year is just from the creation of Earth.
But again, like, why can't we celebrate something that's on the same day as something else? You know, I share a birthday with many people. That doesn't mean that I can't celebrate my own birthday in a way. I don't know. There's probably a lot of logical fallacies in that sentence.
uh,
But the point
Never.
remains.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. For me, I just don't care. Like I think I'm not. I can be swayed either way. Of like maybe it was like just the literal day, and they've
Mhm.
always felt, or it's close enough to the day, and it had nothing to do with the fact that winter solstice, and there's a lot of like rituals that have developed around that. I can be convinced of that. Like I'm not planted firm either way. I also think like if you look at just like the MO of the early church, like it makes sense that they would also be like, hey, this is a significant day for our culture, where
Mhm.
people already are like primed and wired to think about religious spiritual things. Like they're doing it towards false gods in dangerous ways. So why don't we just make it about Jesus instead? Like that was very much like it's just funny for me, especially because I've studied some of that. Like the culture, like the early church and culture. Like, it's funny to me to hear a lot of Christians today like kind of wring their hands over the fact that like well maybe like as though the early church like didn't know like that they were like totally
Mhm.
caught off guard that Christmas well but there's winters they're pagan like they lived in that culture like they knew what all the rituals were. They just for most of the time like they just didn't care like
Yeah.
it's like okay well that's wrong well we're gonna make it about Jesus so come instead of doing pagan stuff like come honor Jesus like that was just very
Yeah.
much how they reviewed like their faith. If we redeem thing, it's like people that wear the cross on like a necklace or something like, oh, that's like an instrument of death that, executed people and
Mhm.
executed our Lord. Like, hey, Jesus redeemed that. We're going to wear it because now there's beauty to it. Like now it
Yeah.
means something different. And we're not, everyone that wears a cross necklace isn't like, oh, I see you support the Roman Empire, like, and they're, it's like, no, like it doesn't mean that anymore. Like no one, and no, I don't think anyone, like, no one thinks of it that way. And I think that's fine because Christians have
Yeah.
sort of redeemed that symbol and made it mean something different. So I don't know. I've never
Yeah.
cared. Like you said, it's kind of like the Halloween stuff, like kind of the genetic fallacy of it's like what whether it was or not, like whatever the reasons were, like clearly the day doesn't mean that for anyone.
Well,
Like
yeah, and I even saw like the comments on the I'll put the post up too, but I saw comments on the post that West Huff had of people being like, "Oh, like did Jesus actually tell us to celebrate his birthday though? Like is this biblical?" And then someone said, "Well, he didn't tell us not to." I was like, I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
and
he's
and, and that
right.
is and that actually pops up in lots of different especially cultural stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't know. Like I'm very firmly like hyper conservative regarding the Bible. Like I'm very Bible. Like base
Mhm.
your life on I mean the Bible as it connects you to God. I think the God is the source of all that. But like so like not to dismiss at all or downplay like the central role that like scripture plays, but like sort of the argument like well it's not in the Bible like because you get that on a bunch of other holidays and things too and it's like I mean obviously it's like the Israelites in the Old Testament weren't celebrating Christmas, like prior to Christ. Like obviously, there's a lot of stuff that's not in the Bible. I just don't think that necessarily. It's sort of like the spirit of Christmas thing. Like
Yeah.
I feel like, well, I don't think it's necessarily about just sort of that legal. As long as it's like specifically laid out, like because like as I thought of that, like there's a lot of things in the Bible that aren't in the Bible, like university, which was invented around like the year 1088 or like the piano which was invented in like the
We
year
can't
1700
we
like
can't be playing the piano,
it's like
Daniel.
but like we don't go to worship and like or I mean most of it maybe you do but like most of us don't go to worship services now and it's like oh and as our worship leader gets up with like the lyre and like the harp and it's into like because those were in the Bible and that's what David played therefore it's like you have like an organ like organs weren't in the Bible like there's like I don't think that's a disqualifier that like well Christians can't do that because the disciples weren't putting up Christmas trees therefore
Mhm.
we should not. So I don't know, I've never put much weight behind like the well it's not in the Bible therefore like I think you measure everything against the Bible like you take like I think that's sort of what we've been getting
Yeah.
at like you take sort of the spirit of Christmas in a modern context and you measure that against scripture and be like, is this consistent with the meaning of Christmas and the meaning of what Jesus came to do? And like, if it's not, then do away with that and, push back against that. If it is, then like maybe the specifics aren't there. Like, but if the way you celebrate Christmas and like singing Christmas carols, which also aren't in the Bible,
Mhm.
like if some of that brings you closer to God and like the meaning, then I don't think we need to be shy about that. And I think kind of another which is always interesting because I think just the way that sort of in the Bible, we don't want to be influenced by like December 25th and some of these things, and we got to be like historically accurate and all that kind of stuff. I think we don't always realize just like how much the way Christians think about Christmas has like also been shaped by culture, and I don't necessarily mean that in
Mhm.
a bad way or that I'm not the guy that will stand up and in the middle of like a Christmas pageant and be like, I see you have three wise men on stage. Did you know that the Bible does not say there were three wise men? It just says there are three gifts, and there very well, may well have been more than three wise. Like I don't think anyone cares, and I would be escorted off the church premises if I did that. Like it to me that doesn't matter. Like, that's
Yeah.
just sort of the imagery that's become accepted. But I mean, there's lots of stuff like, even this wise man in the manger, like, if you were going accurate for a biblically accurate Christmas carol or a Christmas pageant, you gotta like have a time jump, and the wise men show up like 2 years later, and like you got a kid Jesus, like they weren't there at the manger, but I mean it's hard to, unless you have like two, like little whatever the sets of manger
Uh-huh.
sets in your house, like that show the different scenes. Like it's just easier to put it all together. And this is the story of Christmas, and it's sort of all. It's not chronologically accurate, but it sort of captures the spirit. Like even just like the no room at the inn. Like that's another one that you just hear so much about. Like that's like one of the things that even non-Christians know.
How did that even come up? Like, it's nowhere. They were just like, oh, everyone was kicking him out. I
Yeah,
don't.
and like even and like the innkeeper and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
because again, like if you read script, like the reason they're going to the city to Bethlehem is because that's where their family is. Like that's where they're
Yeah.
from.
They
Like
already had
they're going
arrangements, I'm
home to
sure.
like Joseph's home. Like
Uh-huh.
so it's like, well, and like it's not like people, like today where they're, well, now they're all moved or scattered. Like people didn't really move a whole lot. Like he probably, and they're small too, like small town. Like they probably, like he probably has a bunch of family in the city, like, and family that are coming in. Like I think it's more complicated than just, he had nowhere to stay. Like,
Mhm.
well, he probably had a lot of family there, and I think the way we think of sort of the manger is slightly different. And I mean, even just like I was thinking, like the age of Mary, like she's probably like 12 or 13. Like if you kind of go by what would have been more like
Yeah.
maybe historically culture, like, but you don't necessarily get that in like the movie. Like she's usually like a young adult, a more like nowadays acceptable like
Yeah.
childbearing age. Like you don't have like a 12-year-old Mary giving birth. Like it's usually like a
Like,
28-year-old playing a 21-year-old. Like
yeah.
in the movie. Like and it's and like, kind of my question is like, does that matter though? Like does I get you want to preserve, like you don't want to enforce things that aren't true, or I just, to me, like the purpose of all that tradition and cultural stuff is that it points us towards the bigger story. Like it's, like I think churches should maybe do a good job, a better job at
Mhm.
like in other contexts, like walking people through the story. And well, actually a manger in that culture probably wasn't like, or that wasn't probably like a barn. Like it was probably attached to the house, and most houses had, a room for the animals where they could bring them in at night and keep them warm. And so it's, it's probably not some weird barn out there in a main. Like it's probably attached. It's probably, maybe it was probably with like, there's all these things like
Yeah.
that I think are important for people to talk about. Or hey, there wasn't maybe three wise men. This is three gifts. Like there's, I just don't think like a Christmas play or something like. I don't know. I think we can get so caught up in like the traditions and like the
Mhm.
some of those things, and like worry that they're leading us astray and like away from God. And I guess for me, and I don't know how you feel about that, but it's just like, but like, are they like? If, I think we should evaluate that and make sure that but like, if that is kind of bringing to mind the important, the reason for the season and like the
Mhm.
Christmas story, then I don't know. I don't think it's wrong to
Yeah.
have some of these cultural things that we do every year that kind of remind us of that.
Well, there are some things I think that maybe for the sake of it's like adapting something into a movie. There are some things that just don't work as well on the screen, so you have to adjust it a little bit, but the main message is still there. So I think there's definitely some things that churches can like um adjust in the manger scene maybe, but you're not going to sit there and wait 2 years for like 15 wise men to show up in the church, you know? It's like
No, we're gonna have a
a
short
lot.
intermission and then have time jump to rearrange the set, bring on a different Jesus act.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like it's
and I
like
mean, we do that all the time too. Like, like
mhm.
as a kid, like the story of Noah. It's like, okay, we're gonna teach you about the animals and not like all the dead bodies floating in the water, banging against the ark as God
Oh my
wiped out the
gosh.
population. No, it's like we don't necessarily do that because we're trying to point them towards like
Mhm.
the meaning of the story, which is God's provision and His grace on us. Like, and and the way He protected and or Noah and his family, and like that's all true. Like there's just some of the details and stuff about the story
Like
aren't
the in
necessarily.
thing, that still gets me. I'm like, where did that even come from? Anyways, keep
Yeah,
going.
I mean there's so much of our faith that comes from like movies and
Mhm.
poems and things, and they just become so commonplace that I think most people there's a lot of things that people assume come from scripture, and it's like, oh, actually, that was from this movie or from this play or this, Milton's Paradise Lost
Uh-huh.
or whatever it is. But I do think and again, I think it's important to know and study deeply like the accurate sort of cultural, historical, biblical events. But I think it is healthy, which is why I just love Christmas. Like I think
Mhm.
obviously we should sort of, like Scrooge says, like we should live in the spirit, the Christmas spirit, like all throughout the year, in the past, present, and the future. Like sort of how we feel at Christmas is sort of how we should always feel. It's just that we don't. Like we get distracted, we get caught up in things. Like so, I think it's healthy, kind of like how we go to we go to church once a week, or maybe more if you're more pious like Nyah is. But like
I go
you go
once,
to church, like
fortunately.
and it's like, well, yeah, like we should always be communing with God, but we get distracted, and there's something healthy about sort of adding that rhythm of our life that like we continually set aside this time to reorient us back to God after being strayed away from, pulled away in different directions by the world.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of how I see Christmas function, like in like our annual rhythm of life. That like this it sort of ends our year and starts our new year, just remembering kind of what Jesus did. And I know and maybe I can maybe take things a little far. Like we have quite a few Christmas trees in our house. Like I definitely love like decorating stuff, but like for me, like part of my reasoning for that, and maybe I won't when my kids are a bit older, probably still will, but we'll see whatever my wife lets me do. Um, but like part of my reasoning for that is like I'm trying to build sort of this. Like I want my kids to think of Christmas as a very like magical, special, important time. Not just because of like gifts and the flash of lights and stuff, but like like I also we walked through the Christmas story, and like
Mhm.
me and my wife were very intentional about letting them know like this is why it matters. We're at church and we're at Christmas Eve, and we set a time aside that. For me, it's sort of the cultural aspects around it, like the trees and the fun and stuff, and even the presents. Like to me, that's just a way to sort of reinforce that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want my kids to grow up and look back and be like, oh yeah, Christmas is horrible. Like all the other kids had fun. Like my parents, like we never decorated and
Yeah.
we never got presents because that was just materialism, and we didn't sing the songs because that was too cultural. And like I don't know. Like I don't want them to carry that with them, because I think they should have positive associations with Christmas. Like I want them
Mhm.
to like, and I do. Like I loved growing up at Christmas time. Like my family wasn't quite as crazy about decorating as I am now, but we always had fun. Like Christmas is always such a fun time for family, for going to church, for all those things. And I think that's sort of the power of culture. Like if you do keep Christ in at the center of it, then like the cultural aspects just sort of, I guess, reinforce some of that. Kind of as we near the end of this episode, and as the end of the podcast for the year, in fact, what are some of your favorite? Like, I will throw you under the bus a little bit,
Oh.
and say that like I was trying off camera, we were talking about A Christmas Carol, and the movies and stuff, and I found out to my horror, to my great deep disappointment, that like you are a noob, a newbie when it comes to the Christmas. If you have not read A
I
Christmas
was
Carol or
scarred.
watched A Christmas Carol, you're basically living a deprived life.
I
But
know this story.
but do you
Okay?
know the story, or do you just know sort of the the,
I know
the,
the
the
Ryan
narratives? Like,
Reynolds, Will
oh man,
Ferrell
I need to take
version.
away your shovel before you keep digging deeper. But what are some like? Do you have any favorite sort of Christmassy movies or songs or things that like you do that does sort of reinforce, or like at the season, or are you not like that?
Um, I personally don't really like Christmas music. Uh, it's yeah. There's a very few, like I think the lyrics are really great, especially for the older ones. They're really impactful. Like we even had a sermon this Sunday about Bing Crosby's "I'll Be Home for Christmas," and that's the first time like I listened to the words and I was heartbroken. It was so moving. Um, but one thing that I will listen to every year is my actually home church has a Redeemer. If you're ever in Athens, if you go to UGA, check out Redeemer Presbyterian Church on Pulaski and Broad, I think. Anyways, they have an incredible Lessons and Carols service every year, and they always record the songs and post them on Spotify, and they are just hauntingly good. And Dusty loves Bing Crosby and Bing Crosby's Christmas songs. And then for movies, I like Elf. I like While You Were Sleeping. Die Hard is good. What's the one with
I
Jimmy Stewart? That one's really good.
I feel like the Oscars. I need to like kind of turn the music up slowly to like drown
No.
you out, and like have the cane pull you out of the. Um, I mean, those to each their own. Those are some good. There's some good
You're just
mixed
elitist. I think
in
that
there,
you're.
but I am very much like to me, like I mean, I'm with you for like modern Christmas like songs. Like those are hit or miss. Some of them are I grew up listening to, and they're
Michael
nostalgic.
Bublé. No,
Uh,
Michael Bublé is
I
good.
mean, I could go for a little, or some Michael Bublé, or some Josh Groban. But I mean, for me, like the carols, though, like that is
Mm.
peak Western civilization art. I mean, like it does not get better than a Christmas Carol. I mean, like the Christmas Carol songs, like "Joy to the World" and "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," like "Come," "All Ye Faithful," or
Yeah,
"Emmanuel," like
those
all
are
those songs,
good.
like those to me, like cannot like 10 out of 10 no notes cannot be topped. I mean like I you can ask my wife, like I literally get giddy on like the first Sunday of December because I know our church will start singing Christmas carols. Like I love Christmas carols. And I will say, and this is my second soapbox, maybe I didn't step far enough off of it, like and Sam would be able to testify. He's heard this one too many times, but like the practice of adding modern stuff to Christmas carols to me is like when the Bible talks about the unforgivable sin, like I think it was talking about that. Like
Oh my gosh, that's really
joy to the world. Like
far.
there's the joy to the world. The perfect cannot improve that song. And I don't know whose idea it was to like add like, well, what if we had like a modern chorus where we all sang, I will sing, 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 and it's like doesn't need that. Like the
You're
song is
already
perfect.
singing.
Yeah, we don't need to make it about us. Like let's make it about joy to the world. And so
I mean,
I'm not
have
I'm
you
not in favor of
heard
that.
Justin Bieber's Christmas album,
I
Drummer
didn't.
Boy? It's pretty good.
I'm I think the first gift I got for Christmas this year is the knowledge that I was unaware that Justin Bieber had a Christmas album.
It's
I
from when
feel
he
that
was
my Christmas season
young.
is better in the knowledge of my ignorance of that. I will say, unlike some people some Grinches who hate Christmas, I love A Christmas Carol, the story. Like to me, that might be my favorite story ever written. I mean, I think for a lot of people, I mean, for
You're
those of us that are
saying
that
a
are Christians and we
lot.
love Jesus's birthday, unlike Nyah, like that is that is like such a, I mean, it's arguably the most well-known popular story ever written. Like so many people know that story, and there's so many references to it. I read the story. I'm also a Dickens guy, so like I've read all of Dickens
As
novels.
we've
I love
learned,
Dickens.
yes.
But like I don't necessarily reread a lot of books because there's just so many books I want to read in my life that I don't have time. But I will, like every January 1st, I start and I reread Lord of the Rings. And so I start every year, and I end every year by reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I mean, it's not that long. It's not like it's like a novel. It's just kind of a short story, so I can do it in a couple sittings. But like for me, that is the story that just like keeps on giving, and like it is sort of one of those cultural things that like reminds me of. And like, obviously, it doesn't get as Dickens was a Christian, but he was very much like focused on like the theology was maybe somewhat murky. I do think he had a genuine belief in Jesus as his savior, and like he wrote the life of our Lord. He wrote like a book which was the King of Kings animated movie was based on. Like they did that Dickens sort of inspired that came out this year. Like
Oh yeah.
he like rewrote the Jesus Christmas story in his own words, and he read that to his kids every year. And like he didn't want it to be published; it was just for them. And then after his death, eventually, I guess they went against his wishes, and someone published it, and now you can read it. And like I said, I do think he genuinely embraced the story of Christmas. But this sort of, as far as like the Christmas, if you think of like the Christmas spirit, I feel like most people's reference is A Christmas Carol. Like what Scrooge has at the end is sort of like what Christians should have at Christmas time. So
Yeah.
I love Christmas Carol. If you're like Naya and you just haven't, you just you're
I
too busy watching Elf or
I
something.
was scarred. Jim
Uh,
Carrey scarred me, okay? As a
yeah,
young child.
don't watch the Jim Carrey one. I mean there are so many. Maybe we can
Oh,
put
Polar Express is
uh,
good.
Polar Express is
I
okay.
do like
But
Polar Express.
if you're gonna watch one Christmas Carol, it's got to be the Muppets. Like the Muppets Christmas Carol is not just one of the best Christmas movies ever made. Like, it is one of the best movies ever made. Like, this
It's
is
a Wonderful Life. Sorry.
okay. See, I'm glad you watched some more civilized, like sophisticated Christmas stories
No, this
beyond just
whole
like.
time I've been trying to remember what it was called, and it just came to my head.
Well,
Okay,
obviously, it's
sorry.
not that deeply rooted within you.
I just love Jimmy Stewart. He's great.
Okay, any of the classic stuff is always good. But I don't know. I love me and my family. We watch all the Christmas classics like every year, every couple of days. We'll watch a new one. And I do think as Christians, like yes, keep Christ in the middle, the center of it all. But like, don't be shy to incorporate some of these cultural traditions and like be present in our culture, especially if those things like a Christmas Carol or Christmas carols or just other Christmas trees or whatever other traditions like. Especially if those are done in a way that reinforces sort of that central thing, then I think Christians that get too caught up in some of the fear and trembling or the concern, like I think they're just approaching it wrong. I think just if it leads you away, then don't do it. But I think there's a lot in culture that can kind of point us towards Christ at Christmas. But speaking of things in culture that will probably edify you and you should definitely lean into and not have fear and trembling about. The final segment for this episode, we have things we like that you should like too. So this is my week, and I would have recommended A Muppet Christmas Carol as my thing because that could be every week that I have this, is just continue to recommend that, even in the summer, until Nyah actually sits down and watches that movie as she should. But because we've already mentioned that, I will recommend a different Christmas movie that is not Die Hard or Elf or any of Nyah's favorites, but is in fact a animated movie, and that is Klaus. So this is a movie that I'd heard about for years. Like, it's an animated movie. I believe, maybe fact check me to make sure I'm right, but like,
Okay.
I believe it won the Academy Award for the Best Animated Film of the year it was released, and it should have, because it is fantastic. I had always heard like the buzz. Like, I didn't watch it when it first came out. I missed it. And like, I'd always sort of seen it pop up, and I'd heard people saying like, this is one of the best Christmas stories. Like, it's just so edifying. It's just such a well-told story. It's beautiful. Like, and I'd heard that for so many years that I think last year, maybe it was the year before. I think last year though, was like, I finally decided to watch it. Like, it's hard because we have all like we have Rudolph and Frosty and the Grinch and all these movies we watch with my kids, and that it's hard to like fit in a new one to the rotation. But I was like, we will watch this one because I've heard so much good about it. And like, it might, non-Muppet Christmas Carol division, it might be the best Christmas movie out there. Like, I highly, highly recommend it. I think even just like from like a Christian perspective, like there's so much just edifying about this movie. And it's a beautiful story. Like, it's a beautiful told story, but like visually it's beautiful. It's hilarious. Like, love 10 out of 10. Love this movie. So now, will you, in fact, like, are you going to be doing a double header of Muppet Christmas Carol and Klaus, or will you and Dusty maybe kind of savor it longer and maybe watch those on separate nights?
We'll see. I'll let you know. But just to fact check you, it came out in 2019, and it's a Netflix film, and it won a BAFTA for Best Animated Film. But I do want to watch both of these, so I will at some point. I can't promise that'll be this year, but
it will be this year. We will give our first episode back of the podcast. We will maybe do an update. Make sure give her movie reviews. But speaking of the end of the year, this is our final episode of the year. Not exactly sure when we'll be back. We will be back, but whether that's like the middle of January or the start of February or earlier, we usually take some time off at the start of the year just to get our bearings, refresh. But we will be back with plenty, because there's always a lot of stuff to talk about. But do want to thank you guys all that have been tuning into the podcast every week throughout this year. It's been a good year, and we thank Sam too for doing a lot of these episodes with me, and for Nyah for stepping in onto the podcast. So definitely looking forward to it, and we hope you will all have a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you next year for more conversations on faith and pop culture.
Merry Christmas.